Welcome to Grampys Lionel Trains. My recent purchase is a 232 New Haven Alco diesel. What's interesting about this engine, it was only produced for 1 year, 1962. The New Haven has always been one of my favorite road names because I really like the color schemes they use. Looking over the shell, you can see there's a few paint chips from the years of use, and unfortunately the nose has a crack in it. Turning the engine over and looking at the bottom, you can see right away the rear knuckle coupler is missing. We're going to have to replace that if we want to pull any cars around. And also looking at the roller collector assembly, it's pretty rusty, so some WD-40 and a little tension from the abrasive buffing wheel. Also looking at the drive axles, you can see the larger axles are telling us that both of these axles are equipped with Lionel's magnet traction. Removing the Phillips head screw, which allows us to take the shell off from the frame. Right away, you can see there's quite a bit of surface rust here on the frame. That's going to need some attention. You can also see the two-position E unit, which simply operates the locomotive in forward and reverse. And also taking a closer look at the motor truck, you can see the motor truck mounting studs are bent. So that will need to be straightened out before we put the engine back together. Looking at the crack on the nose and also looking on the inside, I don't think there's much I can do to fix that. I think that's the easiest coupler removal I've ever done. Just snip the wire and it's gone. Now the seller listed this engine as untested, but as you can see it's running. However, with all the surface rust we're seeing, that's a pretty good sign it's going to need a good cleaning and a proper servicing. I'll start by removing the bulb and the wire. Next, I'll loosen the screw for the E unit so we can get a closer look at it. Seeing there's a lot of surface rust, this is going to need to be cleaned with a buffing wheel. The good sign is we know the E unit was working properly. Next, I'll desolder the pickup roller wire from the brush plate. After that, I'll remove the horseshoe clip so I can remove the front truck from the frame. To remove the motor truck, taking a pair of needle nose pliers, you want to carefully bend the speed nut and pry it up to release it from the motor truck mounting stud. Once that's removed, take off the spring and the cup washer. Since this engine appears to be original and the wiring is still in good shape, I'm trying not to desolder any of the connections. Taking a closer look at the motor truck, you can see how bent the motor truck studs are. Removing the screw so we can take the frame box off. Next, I'll bend over the tabs for the bulb housing so we can remove that as well. With those parts out of the way, we can get ready for a WD-40 bath. The front truck, the frame, the speed nut, cup washer, springs, all go in to soak for a while. After letting everything sit, I'll come back with a toothbrush and give the frame a good scrubbing. You can already see the WD-40 starting to change color as the surface rust begins to come off. I'll remove the two screws that hold the brush plate on so we can take it off and look at the brushes and also the armature. As you can see, this motor definitely hasn't been serviced in quite a while. There's carbon dust, dirt, and debris all over the motor and the commutator face. So this is definitely going to need a good cleaning. Using a pair of needle nose pliers, you want to gently bend the motor truck mounting studs back into position. Working carefully at the base of the stud, we can slowly bring them back upright. Gently with a screwdriver, you want to remove the bottom housing cover. This is really the only proper way to get access and clean the worm gear on this motor truck. And as you can see, I'm glad I removed it because there's quite a bit of old grease and grime in there. Using mineral spirits along with a paintbrush and a toothbrush, you want to give the motor truck a good thorough cleaning. Work the brushes around the gears and the brush plate to remove all the old grease and dirt. The mineral spirit started out clear, and now you can see just how much grime came off. Using a 600 grit abrasive buffing wheel to clean the rust off the sides of the armature. Removing the rust restores a good electrical path and allows the armature to work properly with the motor's magnetic field. And as you can see, a quick pass with the wheel, the armature is nice and clean again. Taking the abrasive buffing wheel to the wheels in the truck helps remove any dirt or oxidation so the wheels can provide a good electrical ground path. Clean wheels mean better electrical contact with the rails and a smoother operation. Using contact cleaner, I'll go over the brush plate for a second pass. With the Q-tip, I'll also clean the inside of the brush tubes and the armature shaft. But as you can see, the mineral spirits already did a pretty good job on the first pass. Using contact cleaner with a Q-tip, I'll clean the E-unit contact plate where the contact finger slides back and forth. Keeping that plate clean helps maintain a good electrical path. Drying the frame off and removing any WD-40. And as you can see, it actually did a pretty good job of loosening up any surface rust that there was. Instead of using oil on the frame to try to preserve the original blued finish, I'm going to try something a little different here and use Shield T9. This product was originally developed by Boeing as a corrosive protection, and it works by sealing the metal surface and help prevent moisture from getting back into the steel. I'll spray a little in a cup and then use a Q-tip to apply a light coat over the frame. The idea here is to encapsulate the surface rust and protect the original finish without leaving any oil residue. Once it dries, I'll wipe off any excess, leaving a thin protective film that should help keep this frame from rusting again, while still keeping a nice clean appearance. Using a buffing wheel, I'll clean the rust off the bulb housing. This will remove any of the rust and bring the metal back to a nice clean surface. Using the sandpaper wheel to clean the inside of the bulb housing. Removing that rust helps the bulb make a good electrical contact. Sliding the bulb housing back into the frame. I'll place it on a block of wood and using a brass hammer, I'll gently peen over the tabs to lock the bulb housing securely in place. Taking the screw, I'll now secure the frame box back onto the frame. With a couple drops of oil, I oil up the axles and work them in, and then wipe off any excess. Don't forget to oil the worm wheel axle. Also behind the gear train. Make sure you wipe off any excess oil because too much oil will attract dirt. Apply a light amount of grease to the worm gear and also the gear train. You only need a thin film, and then work the grease into the gears so everything's properly lubricated. To reinstall the housing cover, start by lining up one side of the cover with the frame. Then gently spread the frame just enough to guide the other side into place. Once it's seated, you can use a screwdriver to carefully pry it up so the tabs snap back into the holes and lock the cover securely in place. Apply a small amount of grease to the bottom of the armature gear. Then drop it in place and gently move the truck back and forth until everything's seated properly. On the right, you can see the brushes that were with this motor. They're actually the wrong type for this engine. On the left are the correct new brushes that I'll be installing. The nylon thrust washer was there, but it was pretty worn, so I'll be replacing that with a new one. On these engines, The metal washer goes first, followed up by the nylon thrust washer on top of the armature to keep everything properly spaced and running smoothly. Installing the new brushes into the brush plate. After putting them in, you want to make sure they move freely in the brush tubes and that the springs have good tension behind them. Once everything looks good, I'll turn the motor over and use gravity to help hold the brushes in place while reinstalling the brush plate. Before installing the front truck, I like to put a small drop of oil on the truck mounting stud. Then slide the stud back onto the frame and secure it in place with the horseshoe clip. To reinstall the E-unit, I'm carefully sliding it through the opening where the motor truck mounts to the frame. Since the original wire was still in good shape and I'm trying to keep everything on this engine as original as possible, I didn't want to desolder any of the connections. Once it's in position, I'll install the cup washer, the spring, and then the speed nut to secure the truck back onto the frame. Time to oil up the motor, putting a few drops of oil in the wick and also on the armature shaft. Putting the light bulb back in place. Now here comes the fun part, putting the engine back on the test track to see if all that hard work paid off. From the sound of it, it's running a lot smoother. Now we can put the shell back onto the frame and take a quick look on how everything turned out. After removing all that rust and dirt and old grease, the engine is already looking a lot cleaner. Before we finish up, I did replace the rear knuckle coupler head along with the spring on this engine, but I'll cover that repair in a separate video. The Lionel 232 New Haven came out in 1962 and was equipped with double axle magnet traction, which helped give these little diesels some extra pulling power on the rail. I've always liked the New Haven color scheme, and it's nice to see this old engine cleaned up and running again, just the way a lot of these trains would have been running around the Christmas tree years ago. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you won't miss another upcoming video here at Grampys Lionel Trains. Happy railroading!